أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن
والصلاة والسلام على
الرحيم.
سيدنا أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The first hadith which we are going to look at is a hadith narrated by Sayyiduna Abdullah bin Mas'ud radhiyallahu anhu, and this hadith can be found in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah and also of the Sahih of Imam Muslim rahimahullah, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, Ya ma'shar al-shabab, O youngsters, O bachelors, man istata'a minkum al-ba'a, those from amongst you who are capable of ba'a. Now what does the word ba'a mean? Two possibilities. Either the word ba'a can come in the meaning of intercourse, and the second meaning of the word ba'a is that it is in the meaning of marriage. So therefore the meaning of this particular text will therefore be that that person who is capable of having sexual intercourse and also who is capable of getting married in terms of he can afford the dowry, in terms of he can afford the maintenance, the nafqa, he can afford the accommodation for his wife, he can afford her food and her clothing, ta'am and kiswa, then what has Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said? فَلْيَتَزَوَّجْ, he should get married. So what we can understand from this particular text is that someone who is capable of having sexual intercourse, someone who has the means, the financial means to get married, then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is advising this person to get married. Now from this we can understand, and this is common as well and it has happened, that sometimes what happens is that there may be certain situations where there is a boy or there is a guy who is impotent, who, say for example, cannot have an erection, and the parents and the boy, everybody knows that this person has this particular problem. Then what happens is that the family gets this particular boy married to a particular girl. And then what then happens is then there's all this bickering, there's all this dispute about, what should happen next. Then after many arguments, after many meetings, the boy then decides to divorce, or they then decide to cancel the marriage. What this particular text from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us is that first and foremost, if this guy or if this boy is capable of having sexual intercourse, and number two is that he has the means of getting married, then only then he should decide to get married. In last week's lesson, I gave the ruling that if there is an individual who fears that he cannot fulfill his wife's desires, or he fears that he is not able to fulfill or maintain his wife's spending and accommodation and so on and so forth, then for that individual it becomes makruh tahrimi, severely disliked, or even haram for him to get married. So what we can understand is that if a person possesses those two conditions of fulfilling his wife's desires and also he is able to financially maintain her, فَلْيَتَزَوَّجْ, he should then decide to get married. Then the next part of the hadith then goes on to tell us that why should you get married? What are the benefits of getting married? فَإِنَّهُ أَغَضُّ لِلْبَصَرِ وَأَحْسَنُ لِلْفَرْجِ. Two things. Number one is that it lowers a person's gaze, and number two, وَأَحْسَنُ لِلْفَرْجِ, and it protects his modesty and it protects his private parts. Now, those who are not married, they are more likely, and it should be said it's not necessary because sometimes married men also look at unlawful women as well, but those who are not married, then they are more prone to look at an unlawful woman. They are more prone to cast their gaze on an unlawful and on a ghair mahram woman. And Also, sometimes what then that happens is that when they cast their gaze at an unlawful woman, they then start getting into unlawful contact with this particular unlawful woman through Facebook and through MySpace and other kind of internet sources. And then what then that happens is that then leads to fornication and adultery. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Islam has given a spiritual guideline in where an individual can lower his gaze and also protect his private parts, and that is through marriage. And that's what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has highlighted here. فَإِنَّهُ أَغَضُّ لِلْبَصَرِ, that it lowers the gaze, وَأَحْسَنُ لِلْفَرَجِ, and it also protects the person's private parts. Now, with regards to protecting the private parts, remember it's mentioned in Surah Al-Mu'minun, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the qualities of a believer, and Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ, that a believer is he who protects his private parts, and then he fulfills it إِلَّا عَلَىٰ أَزْوَاجِهِمْ أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ, with his wife or with his slave girls. And then he goes on to say, فَمَنِ ابْتَغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ, which means that a person, if he fulfills his desires, other than the two avenues stated above, i.e. he's with his wife or with his slave girl, then that person, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ, is in fact a transgressor. So what we can gather from that Quranic verse is that there are two ways which the Sharia has said that we can fulfill our desires. That is with our wives and with our slave girls. But any other way to fulfill our desires, whether through the form of masturbation as was discussed in last week's lesson, or through any other, for example, viewing unlawful material and we get kicks and we get desires through that particular way, then that is something which is unlawful and that is something which is haram. The two ways which we can fulfill our desires is with our wives and with our slave girls. Obviously, slave girls doesn't really apply in this day and age, so when you look at it, it's only one way, and that is through our wives, and that can only be achieved and attained through marriage. And that's what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying here, that فَإِنَّهُ أَغَضُّ لِلْبَصَرِ وَأَحْسَنُ لِلْفَرَجِ, that through the mediums, through the means of marriage, a person's gaze is lowered, and also وَأَحْسَنُ لِلْفَرَجِ, and it also protects his private parts, and it's also a form of modesty. Then the hadith goes on to say, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَعَلَيْهِ بِالصَّوْمِ فَإِنَّهُ لَهُ وِجَاهٌ. And that person who has a lot of desires, who has a lot of lust and craving, and he really wants to get married, but this person, either number one, doesn't have the financial gain or the means to get married. He can't afford the dowry, or he can afford the dowry but he can't afford to provide for his wife financially in terms of maintenance, in terms of food, in terms of accommodation, and so on and so forth. Or someone who, say for example, wants to get married but he cannot fulfill his wife's desires sexually. So therefore, what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said for such an individual is فَعَلَيْهِ بِالصَّوْمِ, he should fast, because by fasting فَإِنَّهُ لَهُ وِجَاءٌ, that decreases his lust and his desires. Now there's two words here which we need to look at. Number one is the word ikhsa in Arabic, and number two the word wija. Ikhsa literally means taking out a person's desires by having an operation, vasectomy or tubectomy, where you take out a person's testicles. That is called ikhsa. And another word here is the word wija, which is mentioned in this hadith here, and that means that your testicles and your ovaries, these kind of things are still there, but by fasting فَإِنَّهُ لَهُ وِجَاءٌ, it decreases your lust and it decreases your desires. So what this particular hadith is telling us, and this is a very important, you could say, recipe for youngsters, for bachelors who do have desires but they are unable to get married, either sometimes through financial reasons or because of family issues or something like that. then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that for this person, for him to protect his modesty, for him to protect his private parts, for him to lower his gaze and cast his gaze down, he should fast, and through that particular way, his lust and his craving will be desired, and this is how he will save himself from the sins. This is how he will save himself from adultery and fornication. Now, someone may counteract here, and he may say, well, sometimes through fasting, a person's desires increase, it doesn't decrease. So what is the meaning of this particular hadith here, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that through fasting, a person's desires will decrease? Now, the answer to this particular objection will be that if someone randomly, if he was to fast, then it is obvious that particular fasting will not decrease his desires, but it will actually increase it. Just say for example, a person has got a lot of desires, and then once in a blue moon he says, okay, on a Wednesday I'm just going to fast. Now, it is obvious that if you're just going to fast, say once a month, once every couple of months, then that is not going to help you in decreasing your desires and your lust. It's only when an individual fasts continuously for a number of days, then only then that person's desires and lust will go down. If you're once in a blue moon, you're just going to fast and then expect, oh, my desire is going to totally go away, then that is totally wrong. It's not going to happen. It's only when you are up for a number of days, continuously you're fasting, only then that's when the desires will decrease, and that's when the lust will go down. And also another point to remember is that this particular prophecy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam of by fasting your desires will decrease will only happen when you fast according to the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what is the meaning of fasting according to the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It means that you eat for sahri and iftar something small or little amount, or you eat that much which actually suffices your hunger and your thirst. The problem which we have in particular in Ramadan is that when we have our sahri, we have a big massive meal. When we do our iftar, we again have a big massive iftar. So it is obvious that the food which we are intaking, like hot food such as your pakoras, your samosas, your kebabs, they're not actually going to decrease your desire. They're actually going to increase your desire because of the food which you are eating. So it's only when you correctly fast and fast according to the sunnah, and you eat the correct and the right foods, and also you fast continuously, only then that's when the desires will decrease and it will not increase. One particular point you mentioned here regarding fasting and desires is that there is this common belief that people assume or think that if I fast continuously for many, many days, and there is also a scholarly issue here whether it is permissible to fast for many days, but some people think that if I was to fast for many days continuously, then my desires are totally going to be eradicated. But that isn't the main aim of fasting. The main aim of fasting is so that we channel the desires, not to totally eradicate it, because we can't eradicate desires, because we as human beings have been born with lust and desires. So we can't totally eradicate it through fasting, but what fasting does is that it channels it. And there's a very beautiful hadith with regards to this particular point which can be found in Imam Ahmad's Musnad, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that if somebody tells you that the mountain has moved from its place, so if somebody was to come and tell you that Mount Everest or any other mountain has moved from its place, then the hadith goes on to say, to saddiqu, believe it. Then it goes on to say that if somebody tells you that somebody has changed his fitrah, he's changed his nature, then fala tusaddiquhu, then don't believe it. Now what's the meaning of this hadith? The meaning of this hadith is that something which you were born with, fitrah, nature, like desire and so on, you cannot totally eradicate that. You cannot totally remove that. So something like removing the mountain from its place is much easier than to remove lust and desires from you. So this is what this particular hadith is telling us. So what I'm trying to say is that through fasting, It's not going to totally eradicate your desires and it's going to totally go away and disappear. No. But what fasting does is that it channels your desires, that you use it in the correct places, and that is, as I mentioned above, with your wives and with your slave girls, not in the wrong places. That's what fasting does. And also another point to mention here is that, as I said, that the whole purpose of fasting is that it decreases your desire and not to totally eradicate it. And because of this particular reason, that's why the scholars, the majority of the scholars, the Jamhur Ulama have said that human beings in general are considered to be better than angels generally. Obviously, there are certain angels like Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, Mikael alayhi salam, who are more better than, or who are more superior than human beings. But if we were to compare, just generally speaking, human beings with angels, human beings are more better. And the reason why is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created angels in the one dimension. And that dimension is that they just worship Allah. They cannot commit sin. Allah has just created them so that they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nothing else. And that's why angels 24/7 all the time are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when it comes to human beings, because Allah has created human beings with desires, so therefore when a human being, he channels his desires and his lust, and then he worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that person is considered to be more close to Allah than an angel. Because that person is doing more mujahada. He's going through a lot of obstacles and difficulties because there's all these desires, there's all the glitz and glamour of this world. If he wanted, he could have done so many bad things and unlawful things, but no, he channels everything, and then he comes to the masjid, he prays, he remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of that reason, a human being in general are considered to be more superior in the sight of Allah than angels, generally speaking. Why? Because Allah has put a lot of obstacles down for human beings to worship Allah, whereas for angels there's hardly any obstacles there. They have just been created just to solely worship Allah. So for them to worship Allah is much more easier than human beings. So because of that reason, the majority of scholars have said that in general, human beings are considered to be more superior than angels. The next hadith which we're going to look at is hadith this time narrated by Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas anhu, again which can be found in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. رد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على عثمان بن مزعون التبتل, which means that Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم objected to Sayyiduna Usman bin Maz'un radhiyallahu anhu remaining celibate. وَلَوْ أَذِنَ لَهُ لَاقْتَصَيْنَا, and if he had given him permission, then we would certainly have undergone castration. لَاقْتَصَيْنَا. Now in this particular hadith, talked about again the virtues of getting married and the impermissibility or the detestability of remaining celibate. Now celibate or tabattul basically means not to get married. That you don't want to get married, you want to abstain from women. So the hadith quite clearly says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam objected on Sayyidina Uthman bin Maz'un, who had this intention of staying away from women. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stopped him, prohibited him from doing that. And then the hadith goes on to say, this time, the narrator, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, who says that if Prophet had given him permission, then what we would have done is that we would have castrated ourselves so that we can totally remain away from women. Now, just a couple of points to mention with regards to this particular hadith. The first thing which I'm going to mention is regarding tabattul and celibacy. Now, celibacy was something which was carried out in particular by the monks. And this is mentioned in the Holy Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَرَحْبَانِيَةً نِبْتَدَعُوهَا مَا كَتَبْنَاهَا عَلَيْهِ, which means that the monks, they innovated these things, مَا كَتَبْنَاهَا عَلَيْهِ, and it is something which we did not make obligatory upon them. So it was the monks, they started doing these kind of celibacy. They started making things which were lawful and permissible, unlawful and impermissible for them. And Allah quite clearly says that we did not make this obligatory or compulsory for them. Now there are three types of rahbaniya in Islam, or there are three categories of, making lawful things unlawful. The first category is where a person, without any reason, he makes lawful and halal things unlawful for himself. So it could be something like consuming sheep meat or cow meat, which is obviously totally lawful and halal. So if somebody without any reason says, oh, I've made cow meat haram for me, or I've made camel meat unlawful and haram upon me. So this is something which is totally not allowed and totally prohibited in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu la tuharrimu tayyibat ma ahallallahu lakum. That do not make tayyibat, lawful and halal things, unlawful and haram upon you. So that is the first category. Then the second category is where a person is making lawful things unlawful upon himself, but it is due to, say, a medical reason, due to a particular illness, or it could be due to a particular religious reason. So an example of that could be, say, for example, someone's got diabetes, and he says to himself that I'm going to make any sugary food haram upon him. So he stays away from sweets, he stays away from sugar stuff. So like he's making sugar food haram upon him, but he's doing it because of an illness. So that is allowed, that is permissible. Or an example of a religious reason could be like he wants to rectify himself, he wants to become more closer towards the deen, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but then he's got some groups of friends which he thinks that if I was to hang around with them, they're going to totally make me bad and make me deviated. So what does he do? He then stays away from them. So that again is something which is lawful and permissible. And then the third type of rahbaniya is where a person stays away or abstains from lawful or permissible things, thinking that staying away from that particular lawful thing is more rewardable and there is more sawab in that. And this is where the example of marriage comes in, because there are some people, even in our ummah in this day and age, who think that not getting married is more rewardable and more sawab. However, marriage is a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Marriage is something which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, he practiced, and nikahu min sunnati. So some people think that not getting married and abstaining from it is more rewardable and more sawab. So this is also another form of rahbaniyah, which in a hadith of Sunnah Abu Dawood, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, La rahbaniyata fil Islam. That there is no such thing as abstaining from lawful and halal things and thinking that there is more reward and more sawab in that. There is no such thing or no such notion or belief like that in Islam. Now this particular hadith then takes me on to another very important point here. I'm going to mention 4 rulings here. The first ruling is with regards to permanent contraception. The second ruling is with regards to temporary contraception. The third ruling is with regards to abortion. And the fourth ruling is with regards to this kind of modern day medical science where you can say, for example, through IVF and have a child. So what does Islam say with regards to that? The reason I'm mentioning it is because of the last part of the hadith where it talks about castration, and Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas anhu saying that if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did allow celibacy, then we, i.e. the companions, we would have castrated ourselves. Now the first ruling here with regards to permanent contraception is where, say for example, a person has an operation and he takes out his testicles, or a woman has an operation and she takes out the ovaries which releases the eggs, which that form of operation they call it tubectomy or vasectomy. So this form of permanent contraception is something which is totally unlawful and haram in Islam. Totally unlawful and haram in Islam. There is a hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari which is coming up later in the page, this time narrated by Abdullah bin Mas'ud al-Anhu, who would say that whenever we would be in a battle and we would be in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and our wife would not be with us and we had desires, so we then once asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that shall we not castrate ourselves, upon which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited us from doing that. So what we can gather is permanent contraception, like having a vasectomy, is something which is unlawful and haram. The second ruling here is with regards to temporary contraception, and this includes, say, for example, using the morning after pill, or a man using a condom, and so on and so forth. Now, with regards to temporary contraception, there are three types of ahadith which can be found in the hadith literature. There are some hadith which say that this is something which is permissible. There are other ahadith which totally prohibit this, like a hadith of Sahih Muslim where it says ذَلِكَ الْوَعْدُ الْخَفِيفُ. And then in another hadith it mentions that practicing contraception or withdrawal method or so on and so forth, this is something where there is no benefit in. Why? Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants that woman to fall pregnant, then you could use all the methods you want. You could use condoms, you could use morning after pill and so on and so forth. That woman will fall pregnant. If Allah's will and desire is that this woman's going to fall pregnant, you could do whatever you want. This is definitely going to happen. So there are three types of ahadith. So therefore the scholars have said that for a man to use temporary contraception without any reason, then that is something which is makruh tanzihi and slightly disliked. However, if somebody used it for a particular reason, such as the wife is very, very weak and there may be a danger that if she was to fall pregnant again, there may be some consequences with her life or with the way she raises the children, or like other kind of issues where if the couple's relations are unstable and divorce is likely, then in those types of situations it is permissible for the man to practice temporary contraception, and this will be totally allowed without any detestability. However, if the man is practicing temporary contraception or the woman is using a pill because of, number one, fear of poverty. Allah says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ خَشْيَةَ إِمْلَاقٍ, that do not kill your children due to the fear of poverty or because of having this embarrassment of having a girl or a daughter. Then to practice temporary contraception because of these two reasons, then that is something which is impermissible, and that is something which is not allowed in Islam. So if there is a valid reason, then it will be permissible. However, if it is done because of the two reasons I mentioned above, then that is something which is impermissible and not allowed. So that is the second ruling there. The third ruling which I want to mention here is with regards to abortion. Now abortion, as mentioned in the hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, Sunan ibn Majah, narrated by Abdullah bin Mas'ud al-Anhu, who has said that when the sperm or the semen goes into the woman's womb, it stays in the form of a nutfa or a sperm for 40 days. Thereafter, the next 40 days, it then turns into a clot of blood, and the next 40 days, it then becomes a lump of flesh. So we've got 120 days there. And after or on the 120th day, an angel or a malaika comes, and then it breathes in the ruh and the soul into that particular fetus. So keeping this particular hadith in mind, the scholars have said that aborting a child after 120 days is, strictly speaking, something unlawful and something haram. You're not allowed to do that. The only situation where some scholars have allowed it is if the mother's life is in danger, then you can abort a child after 120 days. The second scenario is to abort a child before 120 days. say for example after 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, say anything before 16 weeks, then again that is also impermissible as well. However, this time in the second scenario, if there is a valid reason, such as again if the mother's life is in danger, or the doctors have said that there is a danger that this child may be born with some kind of genetic diseases, may be born handicapped or crippled and so on and so forth, then before 120 days, it will be permissible to abort the child. But not after 120 days, that will be totally unlawful and totally haram. So that is the third ruling with regards to abortion. And the fourth ruling which I want to mention here is with regards to this kind of nowadays all this medical science which kind of enables a couple to have children where physically speaking they weren't capable of having children, which we call like IVF treatment and so on. Now just generally speaking, let me just touch on this particular topic. If first and foremost, if there is a couple and they've tried for many years and they haven't had children, even then what they should do and what was the sunnah of the prophets and the messengers was that they would seek dua and supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they would pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a child. And a great example I'll give will be of Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam, whose story is mentioned in many places in the Holy Quran, where it says that he had reached the age, and it's mentioned in the books of Tafsir, 120 years. So he was 120 years old and he hadn't had a child. So generally speaking, when a person or a man reaches 120 years, he doesn't have a child. It's not physically possible for him to have a child. But Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam, being a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he knew in his heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was capable of giving him a child. But it's only when he saw the miracles which were happening to Sayyidah Maryam radhiyallahu anha, and the miracle here which I'm referring to is not the miracle of her giving birth without a father or without a man. Miracles here was that when she was in Baytul Maqdis, she would receive like out of season fruits and dates. So when Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam saw that with his own eyes, his reaction was totally different. There's two things here. One is known as Ayn Yaqeen, and Ayn Yaqeen, remember, basically means that when you see something with your own eyes, your reaction is totally different than if somebody was to tell you about something. It's like, say, for example, if a teacher was to come to you and say, well, your son is messing around in madrasa, your daughter messes around in madrasa, you don't really, you just take it, but your reaction will be different. You're probably thinking, oh, well, the teacher's kind of exaggerating in there. But when you see with your own eyes that your son is actually messing around, or your daughter is actually messing around, then your reaction is totally different. As mentioned in the hadith, that when Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam went up Mount Sinai to collect the Torah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him that, look, in your absence, your people have started worshipping the calf and so on and so forth. But then when Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam was coming down Mount Sinai, and with his own eyes he saw that what his people were doing, so it was mentioned in a hadith that the slabs on which the Torah was written, it fell from his hand. Why? Due to the shock and due to the astonishment. So what I'm trying to say is that when you see things with your own eyes, your reaction is totally different. And this was the reaction of Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam when he was seeing with his own eyes the miracle. He then had the courage and he then asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a child. And as we know that he was then blessed with a child called Sayyidina Yahya alayhi salam. So what I'm trying to say is that those couple who haven't had children for many years, you should not become disheartened, but instead you should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a child. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being the most merciful, He will definitely accept your du'as and your supplications. However, if the couple have been trying 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and they have this kind of desire for a child, and I mentioned in last week's lesson regarding children, that children is a great blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though they may be husband, wife, even though they may have so much money, even though they may have a big massive mansion, big massive car, but without having children there is still this kind of emptiness in your life. So it's a great blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also at the same time, just mentioning this in passing, that the same way children is a great blessing from Allah, looking after them, looking at them and so on, is also great reward. And just remember a hadith which can be found in Sunan Abu Dawood and Sunan Ibn Majah, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that a woman, so we're talking about woman here, a mother whose cheek has become pale due to looking after the children. Now what I mean by the cheek becoming pale is that mothers, especially young mothers who've got 2-3 young children and they're looking after them, they're rushing after them, running after them, you probably see that they don't have time for any makeup, they don't have any time to comb their hair. So what happens is that the hadith says that a mother who due to her children, her cheek has become pale, i.e. she can't look after her own self, she can't put any makeup, she can't look after her hair, then the hadith goes on to say that me and her would be like this on the day of judgment. I.e., that woman who look after her children and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would be like this on the day of judgment. So one person said there's so much reward in looking after children, but also at the same time, if you don't look after children properly, if you don't take care of them, then you'll be questioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. And an example or a story I'll mention will be of Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu. Now once there was a father, he came to Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu and he said that, oh, my son is messing around, he disrespects me, he disobeys me. So as you know, Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu, whenever he would find that anyone disobeying or anyone doing anything bad, he would call that person to him. So he called that person. And he said to the son that, what's this? Your father is saying that you're disobeying him, you're disrespecting him. What's the gist here? What's happening? So then the son replied by saying that, doesn't the sons or the children have any rights over their parents? So Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab replied by saying, yes, the children, they have rights over their parents. So then the child asked, alright, what's the rights of the child? So Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab said that the rights the child has over his parents are, number one, is that he chooses a good mother for the child. I.e., the wife, the man or the father gets married to, she has to be pious, she has to be religious and so on. So that's the first right. The second right is that the child is given a good name. And the third right is that the child is taught the Holy Quran. It's the father's responsibility to make sure that he teaches the Holy Quran or about anything about the religion, about Islam, about the deen to the children. So the child then replied back to Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab and said, my father, he married a mushrika. He married a non-Muslim. He married a disbeliever. So how can he then expect my mother to give me the tarbiyah and give me the care when she herself isn't a Muslim? The second right regarding the name, so the child says, my father gave me the name Julalan. And Julalan means the dung or the droppings of beetle. So basically, the droppings of a beetle, the feces of an animal, that's the name my father gave me. And the third right was with regards to teaching the Quran and so on. So the child says that my father did not teach me a single word of the Holy Quran. So what I'm trying to say is that just because having children, don't think, oh, that's it, my responsibility is finished. No, just having children, that's the beginning of the responsibility. You then have to make sure that you give them the good tarbiyah, the good education, especially in this day and age, good Islamic education and upbringing, so that they can also remain steadfast on their deen and on their religion. Now going back to what I was starting initially, you should always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for children. However, if many years have passed, 10, 15 years, the couple are not or are finding difficult to have a child, then in that situation the Sharia does allow this kind of IVF treatment where, say for example, the male sperm or the husband's sperm is taken out, the wife's eggs, and then they are kind of fertilized together, then that would be permissible and that would be allowed. But the main thing which needs to be highlighted here is that you have to make sure that another man's sperm or another woman's egg is not used to fertilize the child. Okay, it has to be the man's own sperm and his wife's own egg. Because we mentioned in a hadith which can be found in Sunan Abu Dawood and Sunan al-Tirmidhi, narrated by the companion Ruwayfi' bin Thabit al-Ansari, who said that Rasulullah ﷺ had said that it is unlawful for a man who believes in Allah and the last day that he waters the plant of another, which means that it's unlawful for him to insert his sperm into another person's wife. So keeping this particular hadith in mind, as long as it's the couple's own sperm and eggs are being used, then it will be permissible. If a third person is used, then it will be totally unlawful and totally haram. One final just a couple more hadiths before we finish, inshallah. The next hadith can be found in Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. Again, we looked at this hadith in last week in detail, so I'm not going to go into any more detail here. Rasulullah ﷺ said that a woman is married for 4 reasons: لِمَالِهَا, for her wealth; وَلِحَسَبِهَا, for her status; وَلِجَمَالِهَا, for her beauty; وَلِدِينِهَا, and for her piety. فَخْذَرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ تَرِبَتْ يَدَاكَ, which means that marry the one who has piety and achieve success through that particular way. So if you remember, those brothers who attended last week will know that I looked at this particular hadith in great detail in last week's lesson. The final hadith before we finish, inshallah, Rasulullah ﷺ has said, "Ad-dunya kulluha mata'un," that this dunya, or this world which we are living in, everything is a pleasure, mata'. وَخَيْرُ مَتَاعِ الدُّنْيَا الْمَرْأَةُ الصَّالِحَةُ رواه Muslim, and the best pleasure is a pious wife. And this hadith can be found in Sahih Muslim. Now, what does the word mata' mean? Now, mata' basically means something which you use and then it finishes, or something which you use and then you throw away. That is mata'. And when you look at it, this world which we are living in, it's a mata' in terms of we are using the resources of the earth, in terms of the oil, in terms of the petrol, in terms of the sand, mud, soil, everything. But then a time will come when this world which we are living in will come to an end. For example, the carpet which we are sitting on. So we're sitting on it, we're using it, but a time will come 10, 15 years down the line where this carpet will go bad and the masjid will have to remove the carpet and bring another one in. And this is life. When you look at it, books, a time will come where the books will rip, you'll have to buy another one. Clothes will rip, you'll have to buy another one. So this is what this dunya is. Everything which is in this world, we use it, but then a time will come where we'll have to throw it away or we'll have to let go of it. So what Rasulullah ﷺ is saying, that this dunya is like that. However, the best pleasure or the best goods of this world is al-mar'atu salihah, is a pious wife. Out of all the things which is going to come to end in this world, the best thing which a person can achieve or gain in this dunya or in this world is a pious and a religious wife. It's not the big mansion, it's not the big massive cars. There are a lot of people who have big mansions, they have big massive cars, they have the best jobs, but then unfortunately they have a wife who's always defeating them or defeating the guy, who's always unfaithful to the guy, who's always evil, always talking back to the husband. Then that person, and even if you speak to him, he'll say, you know what, I'll give up everything so that I can have a pious wife. So it's not all about the wealth, it's not all about the big massive houses and so on. If you want the contentment, if you want to live a happy life, because when you look at it, the dunya or the world which we're living in, this is something which we can't find, is this contentment of the heart. Many people, they have big massive jobs, expensive cars, they have the expensive houses, they have everything, but they don't find the peace of heart. So what this hadith is telling us is that if you want the peace of heart, if you want something where you can look up to, which you can enjoy, and so on and so forth, then it doesn't lie in the beautiful houses, it doesn't lie in the beautiful cars, it doesn't lie in the expensive holidays you're going to and the 2-3 weeks you're going for, but it lies in a pious and a religious wife. And I'll just finish off with the hadith which can be found in Sunan al-Nasai. Again, talks about the beauty of having a beautiful wife and a religious and a pious wife, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that a Muslim can acquire no benefit after Iman greater than a Muslim wife. Meaning after Iman, the next best thing which you can have is a Muslim wife who makes him happy when he looks at her. So when he looks at her, then she smiles back and he gets happy. She obeys him when he commands her. So when he says to his wife, do this, the wife does it. When he says to her, oh, can I have a cup of tea, or can you do this, can you do that, the wife readily obeys the husband. And this is important. And she protects him when he is away from her in herself and in his property. Meaning when the husband's not there, the wife is faithful to the husband. And also she is also faithful in his property. So women, they have this habit that when the husband's not there, they then use the husband's wealth and in buying like extravagant things and extravagant gifts and so on and so forth. But what this hadith is saying is that a pious woman or a wife is someone who's not unfaithful to the husband, and also she treats the husband's wealth as her own. In terms of she won't be lavish, she won't be extravagant when it comes to spending. We leave it there for this week. May Allah give us tawfiq to our